The All-Stars 4 final comes to a close. Major advantages are given. The group is whittled down. TJ goes full Ron Burgundy. Steve makes an all-time mental mistake. And Laurel versus Cara is decided once and for all. It's the Challenge All-Stars 4 Episode 12, a.k.a. the finale recap, coming up right now. What up, my fellow Challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future, if it's happening in the Challenge universe. We are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge Historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here on this not quite final Wednesday. There will be one more Wednesday of All-Stars 4 coverage, but the final Wednesday of All-Stars 4 episodes, 12 weeks down, 12 episodes down, the season complete. We have our champion. Congrats to Laurel. Spoiler alert, I guess, if you clicked on this podcast before actually watching the episode, probably should say that before I say the champ, but I doubt that there's any of you listening to this prior to watching the episode or knowing the results of the episode at least. So, All-Stars 4 in the book. Today, here is just episode 12 recap, the finale recap. We will be back one more time next week, probably on Wednesday. It could be a little earlier. Make sure you subscribe, follow. You'll get notified when it actually happens, but probably on Wednesday. We'll just keep it nice and routine to do our full season recap and awards, talk about much more big picture items. There are some things from this finale that will definitely probably even come up on that full season because there's a little more big picture stuff going on here in this finale. But today is just running through the final, talking about the winner, talking about all the twists and turns along the way. So that's what we're here to do. We'll run through the storylines. We'll hand out some awards quickly at the end. And then, come back next week again to do that full season recap and awards, give an update on the future of this show and channel, what the off-season, if there will be an off-season, look like. So stay tuned. And thanks, as always, for tuning in. And I hope that when I say that each and every week that I love and appreciate you, that I really, really do mean that. It means so much to me that you listen or watch these videos or these podcasts each and every week, and that you consume the challenge right along with me. It is the best show. It remains my favorite show. It remains the most fun thing to do each and every week. So thanks for being here. As always, love and appreciate you. Let's dive in. Episode 12, the finale. Here we go. 0 physical skill required. That is where we've got to start. Before we actually run through each and every little part of the finale, a couple high-level things must be discussed. The first one is, for the first time ever, we have essentially a true series of Carnival games as a finale. Not just part of the finale, but the whole entire thing. There was no running. I know at the very, very end, they ran what seemed to be not that far of a way. So essentially, there was no long runs. There was no kayaking or canoeing. There was no swimming. There was no carrying of heavy objects. There was really not a single checkpoint where the athletes would clearly shine through and gain advantage, which is ultimately kind of what I originally thought All-Stars 1 was set up to be more of, and then there was like, no, you're gonna still hike up to the top of the mountain there, and that's gonna be who wins the final. And so it feels like we've got this kind of mixed message from All-Stars of like, All-Stars 1, no, they're doing a real final, the real thing, even with all OG older cast members, where a final like this one would have been absolutely thrilling and super duper fun. But then slowly but surely over 4 seasons, and now with the 5th one upcoming, knowing the casting of, they do more and more new players that are a little bit younger, maybe more and more of the ones that are training and treating this like the endurance sport that finals had become on the flagship and were shown to still be in the All-Stars world. And so as we introduce more and more of those, we get to a point where on All-Stars 4, we feel like, hey man, there's a lot of people that should maybe still be on the flagship. There's a lot of like, look at this female cast, especially like, look at these heavy hitters, these athletes, these absolute studs. And then we get the full Carnival only final. So not to say I don't love it, not to say I anywhere near hate it or anything. It just feels a little bit of a mixed message coming from production of like, we never got these things kind of in sync. You know, did I greatly enjoy the Cara versus Laurel showdown here? Absolutely. Would it have been much more interesting to see the Cara versus Laurel showdown up the mountain of All-Stars 1 and again flip that cast into this scenario? I think if I was allowed to do that, if I could go back in time and do that, I would. Yeah, it's very interesting. I do like that, you know, they meant what they said all season long. TJ said anyone can win. This is designed for anyone to be able to win this, stay in the game, get a star, and you can win. And sometimes when they say things, they have mantras like that throughout a season. It's complete BS. It doesn't really mean anything. And this time, I feel like they were trying to make it very clear to the, with respect as always, to the queen, to the Veronicas of the game of like, hey, just so you know, anyone can win. I don't know how many times I have to tell you before you're going to believe me that the final is going to be something that anyone can win, but they actually did it. They made a final that I think any of these people, looking back now, anyone could have won except for Flora because she wouldn't have done it if she got there. But anyone else in the whole cast, you know, there's no one that couldn't have done all of the things in the final and at least, you know, done all of them to a degree where they, you know, wouldn't have such a big disadvantage in one single checkpoint that it knocks them out or it ruins their time or anything like that. So they said what they said and they stuck to it. And I do think that for the older players, the super OGs of the franchise watching this or hearing about this, talking to a Veronica who was there for the whole thing, might feel a little more encouraged to say yes to a future call if they don't have to dread the idea of like, well, like that sounds cool, but also I'm not interested in the sport. I'm not interested in like needing to get in really good shape so I to not embarrass myself or something. This could be an encouraging thing to get more and more OGs, older folks into these challenge houses, into these All-Stars houses. And it also should be noted, this is also much easier to set up for production and much less expensive. Like the compound they used for the entire finale, essentially the entire final, you know, they went outside of it at that last part. So they had to have two locations, basically, one for each day. That is one, it was great setting. I loved it. I thought it looked cool. I thought everything about it, like it just worked really, really well. And so visually and for what we actually got, like as a viewer of the show, loved it. But trying to think from the production side, I also just think this is an absolute fantastic way to run it, make it as cheap as possible without sacrificing, again, what it looks like, how it goes, the actual product that you're putting out there. It's just fantastic operationally, makes it so much easier, more efficient for them, makes it a much higher chance that they're going to run things smoothly and in a really good way versus debacles of finals past. Just everything in one spot works really, really well for them. And so as the show tries to continue on into the future, the unknown future of the Paramount in the very final stages of being sold right now, who knows what's happening to MTV in the very near future? Who knows what's happening to Paramount Plus? Who knows where Buna Murray could take this production if those places, MTV and Paramount Plus, didn't exist or did not have the budget or did not want to purchase? You know, who knows what the future of this show has in store, but the idea of like, it's a much more lean budget, efficient run. You know, we've seen, to make the parallels to Survivor, like, they switched for COVID purposes to, we're going to do shorter seasons always in Fiji. And then they're like, actually, this is amazing. It costs way less and we're way better at doing it. And it just has all of these advantages from the behind the scenes production side. We're going to keep doing it. I feel like this could be somewhat of that moment for the challenge of like, hey, the final should take place in one spot. Going up the mountain is hard for the cast members, but it's harder for production. There's more things to screw up. I feel like they could be setting us up for a lot more of things like this in the future. So for now, I like it, but some small part of me was a little disappointed. I think I'll cover more in the season recap of, if the season featuring like Laurel versus Cara versus Rachel versus Cam and Leroy ending with the least physical final ever, not ever, but in modern finals here, was a match or not. Again, mixed message for sure, but an interesting choice, fascinating choice, and something I think we will be seeing more of in the future. The star advantage was horrible. I'd like to think I'd feel this way no matter who got them. Listeners all season long-time listeners of the show, you can diagnose me as the fan as however you will, and believe me or not believe me. I think, yes, was I rooting for Cara in the end here? We'll come back to that, but yes, I was. But even if Cara was the one getting all of these advantages, if Leroy was, if Steve was, if Veronica was, if Ace was, if Nicole even was, I think I'd feel the same no matter who got them, who benefited from them, who was hurt by them. I really disliked this. I would borderline say I hated this. It's too much luck and too much advantage to put in play for such a short section then at the end of the final. I know the pro argument, the pro star is being given by those eliminated. Anyone who's in favor of that is going to lean on, hey, it pays to have friends in the challenge. The social game should be, should have a benefit to you. And there isn't really that big of ways to bring the social game into effect in a final. And this is a way to do it, to be able to give out advantages versus disadvantages at any point is a way to potentially benefit those who had strong relationships and who kept as big of an alliance or as many alliance members as possible. And to that I say, we've been sitting here complaining for season after season about one alliance running the whole thing and it being unfair to the one or two people who might be the best competitors to have one alliance run a season without threat. And the format incentivizes one alliance running a season without much to any threat, or making it so impossibly hard for someone to come up against that and overcome that this felt like more of that. It incentivizes more of that to have this type of element in a final. The advantage is one in the games to be in place for then the next little elimination game. Those were within reason. They were fair and they were earned. You literally earned them by winning a game. Was the final one a bit extreme? That winning the one final game, the one game where you could gang up on someone and stop them from having a chance at winning, then becomes the biggest disadvantage in the final elimination? Yes, it absolutely was. We will cover that more when we run through each of the games here, but at least it was an earned advantage that still had a social element to it of the pick order and everything else. So yeah, I just, luck will always play a role. Social game should play a role to some degree in a final, but the goal should be to be as light-handed as possible from a production standpoint. And this twist was just way too many fingers, toes, body parts on the scale from production, if you ask me. Let's talk about each of the games and the checkpoints here. We'll run through the rest of day one, and then we'll hit day two on its own here. So Spicy Foot. First, Derek goes home. Laurel remains. The cliffhanger that it felt like it wasn't too much of a cliffhanger given how they edited the prior episode. But Derek goes home. A great season for him. Loved getting to see him shine. Was surprised that I enjoyed getting to see him shine. And I'm now. I wasn't super thrilled bringing him on to this season. Wasn't like against it, but wasn't one of the cast members I was super excited about, and feel like now there is more story to be told here. And so we'll probably enjoy him much more, or have more expectation of enjoying him on future seasons that he will be on. Then we did Spicy Foot. It's made to just make them look silly and be in pain for a few minutes, and it does that job. No real notes. Hope they did actually have milk for them afterwards. Then they go to the balance for survival, and I've got questions. Who is in charge of placing the tubes on the shoulders, the tape on the shoulders, the building of the contraptions themselves, because it seemed like some people's were a bit more accessible. Regardless of neck flexibility or strategy, ability to move shoulder, head, neck, all at the same time, in different ways. Regardless of that, it seemed like some folks were much more accessible than others, and that definitely played a role here. Leroy in particular, it looked, I went back and unfortunately I can't take screenshots. I'm not, on the screener list or anything. I don't have the ability to do that. I took some, the bad phone picture of the computer, the television screen watching, and, went back and watched again and confirmed, like, Leroy's is strapped down. The very edge of his tube is strapped all the way down to the shoulder, where he's really got to get back there. And I got to remember to not act this out and end up not talking into the microphone. He's really got to get back there to get, the water into the tube. Whereas a few others, most notably Laurel's, is sticking up pretty far off of her shoulder, is not taped all the way down by any means. Now, she had the best form of anyone for sure and handled this, the experience shown through, and just stay calm and you can figure this out. It's not that hard. And, got to push your shoulder forward, get your neck back, and you can get your entire mouth on the cup first to drink it, your entire mouth on the tube before you start spitting. She had the form. She was not getting eliminated this regardless of anything. So this is not a Laurel, they cheated for Laurel or anything like that. And she was not the only single one that had, your tube seems to be sticking up a little bit in the air and the others seem to be completely taped down. And how far back is it on the shoulder? I think it also had something to do with, the tube is attached to the strap, which is attached to the whole thing. So, could you maneuver with your other shoulder to get the whole thing on your back to move around? I don't know. It was seemed like there was a lot of variability is all I'll say. And, everyone's fit different. Everyone had a little bit different of a time. And Leroy, I think, was the one that was really suffering from this. Veronica as well. I did not think it was any, coincidence that they ended up in the bottom when going back and kind of looking at everyone's positioning. And Leroy goes home, and I was absolutely heartbroken. And I don't know if it's ever going to happen. He comes in the best shape of his life. Well, at the time, he continues to get even more. He's going to come into season 40 and definitely in the best shape of his life and a man on a mission. But he was here, and I just worry it's never going to happen. I don't think Leroy. I don't know if Leroy's going to win. I certainly still want him to. I'm still rooting for him. I can't believe we found one single person out there who actually does not like Leroy, which is just shame and shocking all together. But he goes home. I was heartbroken, but the show goes on, and the show goes on to Hoseball, which Nicole should have been in heaven. They literally play a firefighter game. I know firefighters don't actually sit there and blow an inflatable ball around with the hose, but you had to wear the gear and, maneuver the hose. It's pretty advantageous for Nicole, and it made me sad that Jay wasn't there for this one. It would have been great to get to see him, get to have an advantage thrown their way like this, but ultimately not advantage to Nicole, because this one is, 3 teams of 2. One team of 2 can get teamed up on it. It ended up being Nicole and Laurel because Steve was able to help Cara and Ace much more than Veronica was able to help Laurel and Nicole. And that team in the middle kind of decided the fate here, and Steve not really helping Cara and Ace as much as hurting Nicole and Laurel, and Veronica not able to hurt Cara and Ace as much, was the difference. And it was smart on Steve's part for, I don't think me and Veronica are going to win this, and so I'm going to help my 2 buddies over there, and who knows, maybe that can help me some small part. I'll at least be in line to they get an advantage. If there's any way that can help me too, I'll get it, and it does play out that way. So I think he makes the right decision, again, it... Well, first, as always, what are the rules? Because it felt like there was none explained to us, the viewer. It was just let's talk about TJ and Ron Burgundy costume and material that he's working on, which was absolutely fantastic, and I loved every second of it. But we never got the rules. It seemed like at least a few rules were explained to the players themselves. It was a complete chaotic mess. And I didn't ultimately get a lot out of watching this one. It was mostly just, I mean, I got a lot because we got TJ as Ron Burgundy again, but the game itself didn't get a ton of, just a lot of questions. And the end was like, okay, Ace and Cara have an advantage. Great. And we head to Bluff Night, which that advantage becomes realized is by far the biggest advantage of the whole final. As far as the advantages won go, obviously, again, the star advantage was the biggest advantage of the final by a mile. But as far as winning an advantage for the next elimination round, this one mattered the most because the draft order is a strong thing to give, to give power over, on top of getting to choose your game and having the full choice of the game and no chance of any of them being locked out to you. But I really do, because of the 3 games that they were given, I really do think in the end it's just Ace and Cara won the ability to play the easy game, the game that didn't have a lot of high risk variability to it. It was going to take, could you have sucked at throwing those balls and somehow missed? Yes. But it probably wasn't going to happen. But you also couldn't do it in like 3 seconds, which the one thing about the ball rolling is like you could, in theory, do this in like 3 seconds. So I think the advantage, the draft order somewhat mattered, but really they got, to play the one game that was like the most straightforward. You're not going to get eliminated on this. You're not going to get last doing this game. You should probably get near the top, but certainly 2 people will doing the other games with a little more high variability will do worse than what you're going to do here. So that's the advantage they got, but the draft order still very much mattered for sure. I enjoyed the interactions of, the trying to get the info out of Cara, Ace, Steve, give Nicole her props. It was very entertaining to see her continue to press. Laurel listening in while Steve and Cara did not even realize was absolutely hilarious and a wonderful moment. And the games then, the throwing the fire thing, it looked really cool. It probably was fun, super easy, straightforward. Again, you won't get eliminated doing this. The other 2, I need to know how much time you get on the ball throw before you actually start your time, because they at least get to look at it. And we see Steve like take a quick like walk around to the side, lean over on the thing, kind of look through a couple of the holes and decide, this seems difficult. I'm going to go back to the nails. So like, how long would you have been allowed to study? Because then they start your time, or seemingly start your time when you roll the first ball. Could you be like, I need an hour. I need to think this through. I need to go look from both sides of the board, the bottom of the board, the top of the board, through the hole at the bottom. I've got to study this thing, because if you study it, there is definitely, it can bounce anywhere. So there's a bunch of paths that could result in the ball bouncing randomly out of luck and going through the hole. But there was definitely a path this is the path that if you throw it on this angle at this relative speed, it goes through this one, it goes through that one, and it's good. And if you have an unlimited time to study, you should be able to figure out, okay, this is the path, and I feel like worst case it'll take me 3 tries, once I have the path. So if they got forever to study, I get, but I feel like they didn't get at forever to study, so it makes it very tricky to pick between the nails and that. But ultimately, I'm picking the nails. I'm going to assume if you're not given unlimited time to study, I'm probably going to pick the nails over the roll in the ball. And what happens if Laurel does the balls instead of Veronica or Nicole? Because Nicole and Veronica both picked before Laurel. And, Laurel does get, I think, what Cara originally wants of like, I think the nails are the trickiest thing here. And no one really ends up having an issue with the nail, and they weren't using the best form ever. So the whole idea of like you're just going to bend those and it's going to be a mess, it's going to be super hard, did not come really into play. Veronica and Nicole kind of picked wrong, and I was kind of stunned by their picks. Like Veronica, I'm like, you got it. This one, yes, you might get it in one shot and you win, but you're going to do a lot of running back and forth and climbing up to the top of this thing. Doesn't seem ideal for you. And Nicole, you got to use your brain much more than your brawn of just pound those nails in. I was very shocked at Nicole's choice. I was a little bit surprised in Veronica's choice, and that it left Laurel with the one that definitely is, again, the brawn, the one time you kind of get to use your brawn here, there's a little, be smart about it, be composed about it, and she was able to do that in advance. And Nicole and Veronica both go home in this moment. And you know I did I end up being like, man, I really wanted to see how Veronica would have got down this hill on this scooter? Yes, I would have very much enjoyed that. And do I love that only 4 people finished the final and then really only 3? Kind of not, but it's the last 15 minutes of the episode, so it's kind of fine that it ends up being down to 4. It's probably ultimately for the better. So Veronica and Nicole head home. They both give their stars to Laurel, giving her the significant advantage. And then everyone sleeps on a cargo red for like 5 hours at least, maybe more, depending what time they made them get up the next morning. It's a pretty solid sleeping arrangement for a final. And we head to day 2. For the final race, they got to scoot down a mountain and then do essentially 15 puzzles. 5 puzzles, one of them 5 times, one of them 1 time, and all in between. And not puzzles, eating, puzzle. Let's see, it was an eat, a puzzle. Third one was stacking the stones, and then a puzzle, and then a little game that only one person had to actually end up playing or ever doing. The scooter down the mountain is absolutely terrifying and scary, and they did not do that justice. The fact that it's terrifying and scary, that they glimpse it with Cara, and the one time she kind of skids over to the side and falls down. That is not easy to, they're going, if you want to go fast, you're going to be putting yourself in a little bit of danger, a little bit of risk, a little bit scary. And so I don't think they did that justice, but it was cool. And it was the one part that I guess is the one true physical part of how comfortable are you doing this? What? And so the one little bit, but it ultimately, I would love, as always, I would love an actual timer, a true timer, not anything we have to question from production and what they're showing us. An actual timer of like how long did that take versus the puzzles and different things? How much of an advantage was it that that Steve and Laurel got down the mountain much faster than Cara did, etc. Would have also loved to have been told the 5 puzzles before they started, just so we had the context and knowledge, kind of. It's fun as the surprises kind of, I guess, come along the way, but I would have loved a quick layout. These are the 5 puzzles before we watch all of them do them. And they're running through, they're doing their laps. No one's really having a problem with the eating the cockroach or the drinking of the drink, except for obviously Ace, who loves the cockroach and feels horrible, which... I didn't go back and double check. They have to do that 5 times. It did not seem, there was certainly 5 cockroaches if you wanted to go eating each time. I don't know if they were offered 5 drinks. Maybe they did have to eat at least once. Should have went back and checked that. But they're moving along. They're doing good. And then Steve takes the lead, and Steve loses the final on just a mental lapse, just a complete mental lapse. He forgets the rules that you can only use your advantages 1 per round. He saves his 2 to the final round. He has taken the lead. He still has his advantages. I think he would win if he would have remembered the rules, and it's truly heartbreaking to see someone lose because they forgot the rules, and to be able to pretty definitively say they lost because they forgot the rules. It's on them. It's only their mistake. So they got to own it. The results are the results, but the heartbreak is real no matter how you feel about the guy, the cast member. If this is the way someone loses a final, is really, really tough and really, really heartbreaking to see. Because I think the run was short enough that he would have made it without being caught. It's not a guarantee. It's, again, as always, tough to know how far did they actually run there. How long did that run take? Laurel is faster than him and would have made up ground, but I do think he wins if he remembers the rules. Even if he remembers the rules in the moment and is like, oh shit, I have 2 of these left. I should have used one earlier. Oh well, waste of 1. I'll use the one on the 5th thing and do the quick puzzle that I know to be very fast. I think he wins in that. If he remembers the rules from the start and he actually uses uses both those advantages to skip something else earlier on and then to skip the last thing, he wins probably comfortably. And so, yeah, it just sucks. He really was made for this type of season. A game full, complete Carnival games the whole way, silly random skills, and a willingness to not care if you look silly trying to do them. Just well-rounded Carnival enthusiast, random talents, random, composure, the whole thing. He was made for this season. And I loved watching him do so well on it. And the argument for a male and female winner and having, not having just one single winner grows stronger. Because I don't think it takes anything away from the Laurel versus Cara story to have Steve triumph here as well. And to have that moment where Leroy goes and be like, whoa, Steve or Ace is going to win. Like, nothing is taken away from Laurel versus Cara being the dominant story here by having that happen. And so the same as Nerys is a champ to me. She doesn't get to be called the champion, but in my mind, she is a champion level player. Same as Zach has a second title in my mind to some degree. Same as Ninja probably should be considered a champ from War of the Worlds. Same as John A. should either be a 3-time All-Stars champ or Kellyanne should have gotten her first champ on All-Stars 1. They break the tie somehow going up that mountain. Steve should be thought of as a champ and will be in my book that he was a champion caliber player, champion caliber season here. I hate one-winner seasons. I think it only does damage to the show. But that's what we got. And that one winner comes down to Laurel versus Cara, as it was played up to be the whole season long, and Laurel gets the win. And it's amazing to see Laurel win. A big part of me is absolutely thrilled for her. You get put in the toughest of tough spots going into a challenge house. Kind of an unfair spot, if we're being honest. The more we've learned from some of the interviews and things she's done, not the first time she's been put in a tough spot where they're asking her to do things she has no interest in when it comes to Nicole. She talked on the Death Taxes Bananas podcast about, the X on the peak of love, X on the beach type, whatever that season was that her and Nicole were put on, what that experience was like. I'm thrilled for her that, put in those spots, edited in a kind of unfair way. You should at least be able to get the win and get the money for it. That's fantastic. And, I've long been a Laurel fan, even in times where it's tougher than others. It's usually blamed on the editing more than herself. But the advantage part will be brought up, at least for now. It's likely forgotten pretty soon. And as always, it is just part of the game. Every final has things like this. And it was no guarantee that it was, that it was Laurel that was going to benefit from this. And she is the one who, earned it via the social relationships. So it is what it is. And Laurel being a 2-time champ feels so much more correct. It feels correct. Her being a 1-time champ never felt correct. It was always one of those where when you talked about the best ever, the most dominant, this, that, or the other, when every time Laurel came up, it was like, oh yeah, she did only win once though. Like isn't it kind of, it's almost weird that she only won once because she feels like this dominant force, and it never felt right. So 2 times out of 8 feels much more correct. She's too good, too dominant, too many parts of the challenge to only have 1 win. So it's great. I'm always going to want the best for Laurel, the person. I'm always, some part of me to some degree is rooting for Laurel, the competitor. It's always going to be complicated feelings, again, mostly thanks to the edit she gets on each season as much as anything she actually does or says. She is a complex, polarizing, dominant challenge competitor. It's why her and Jordan were just the perfect couple. Not like the perfect couple for relationship purposes, the perfect couple for perfect pair of like, these two just make the most sense to be together because they're kind of so similar in like how dominant they could be at this thing, how polarizing they could be at this thing, how their attitude towards others and the way they approach this is both their biggest downfall and their biggest strength. The whole thing, they just made so much sense that one season that they was that free agents that they were canoodling and having a little showmance. But yeah, Laurel's the champ. Love it for her. The Cara comeback ends in second place. It's a tough spot. We'll say Cara took Laurel's celebrating of Cara and somewhat backhanded compliments and backhanded, oh, now we'll say the nice things. We'll reference the you're a varsity player now. That's really difficult to take in Cara's situation right there. Coming in second, she does so with a lot of grace. So give her that. Highly recommend listening to not just Laurel's Death, Taxes, and Bananas podcast that I referenced a second ago, but also Cara's and Cam's, all three of them, because, and I think all of them three have been either on Challenge Mania, Official Challenge Podcast, all three of them, whatever. I would listen to all three women talk about this season as much as possible because there was a lot we didn't see, a lot somewhat misconstrued based on the edit. They were all contradicting each other directly or indirectly, calling each other liars in their different interviews about things others were saying in their interviews, etc. So, yeah, it's a big blurry mess. Cam's account, for my money, sounded kind of the most accurate, the one I was like, if I'm going to fully believe one over the other, I'm leaning towards Cam's here, but who the hell knows? I do know this. I loved watching Cara again, as I expected to. Found myself rooting for her in the final. I knew she was in the group of like people I'm rooting for versus agnostic towards. She was certainly in the group I'm rooting for. But I very much throughout the final last two episodes here found myself being like, I really want this to happen for her. It's going to be great for the show, but I'm going to feel great for her. And so I look forward to rooting for her again on a future season very, very soon, with hopefully season 40 coming up not too far away. Let's hand out some quick awards before we wrap this up. Best quote of the episode, hands down, TJ Lavin. Quote, God put me on this earth to do two things, ride bikes and blow air horns. End quote. Unbelievable. Love TJ to death. Glad he seemed to be having a great time. Best moment, that Ron Burgundy performance from TJ. Laurel listening into Cara whisper to Steve was fantastic. Steve, not the best moment for him, but memorable moment to say the least, forgetting the rules in the shocking, oh my God, Steve's going to win. Oh my God, Steve just lost. Oh my God, Steve just lost. It's horrifying. It's brutal, but it is a memorable moment to say the least. And then the final one, that final nominee, they closed the last 7 seconds of the season with a quick Ace felt so bad about eating that cockroach that he decides to go back and free all the other ones. Oh my God. I love Ace so much. He's so wonderful. What a guy. What an absolute gem of a human being. The Ace, the MVP, the Ace of the episode. The MVP of the episode does not go to Ace. He did do his part till the end. Love him to death. So did Steve. Love him to death. Cara is fantastic. But, in an episode where they all kind of get featured billing, Laurel is going to take the MVP to go with her win. And we will see who takes the MVP of the full season. Something until this very moment right now, as those words came out of my mouth, I hadn't really thought of, and I have no idea who's going to get. It's going to have to do a lot of research, going to have to go back through all the notes. Probably won't watch all of the episodes again by any means. Maybe I'll watch some clips here and there. But we'll review the tapes as much as needed. We'll review the notes, of course. And we'll come up with full season awards next week, a full season recap. Loved, hated, in the middle, cast members I want to see back, the whole thing. You know how a season recap works. At this point, we'll grade the season. We'll rank the 4 All-Star seasons. We'll do a bunch of fun stuff. So make sure you're here again next week. Again, probably on Wednesday, our typical time. Maybe it'll come a day or two early. Depends what the work schedule looks like next week. We shall see. But if you hit follow, you hit subscribe, you make sure downloads are on, notifications, all those fun things, depending where you're listening or watching, then you'll know exactly when I release that full season recap and awards next week. So that's that. I'll talk to you again in a week's time. Thanks as always for being here. An all-star season for the record books. A wonderful time it was. Thanks for being here 12 weeks in a row. Let's make it 13 next week. Until then, peace.